If you've ever felt misunderstood for being quiet, this is for you. Most people misunderstand quiet people. They mistake silence for emptiness, distance for indifference, and comfort with being alone for weakness. They assume that if you don't speak much, you must not have much to say, that if you pull back, you must not care, that if you're comfortable in your own space, something must be missing inside you. But that assumption couldn't be further from the truth. You didn't become quiet because you wanted to disappear from the world. You became quiet because, early on, you noticed something most people don't notice until much later. You noticed that attention is unpredictable. That presence doesn't always mean care. That someone can be right in front of you listening, nodding, agreeing, and still not truly be there with you. That realization doesn't break a person. It reshapes them quietly. It settles into your awareness and begins influencing how you think, how you speak, and how much of yourself you offer to the world. You stop oversharing. You stop explaining every emotion in detail. You stop assuming that honesty will automatically be met with understanding or safety. Not because you don't care, not because you're emotionally closed, but because you learned through experience that understanding is not guaranteed. And once that lesson sinks in, it stays with you. When emotional support is inconsistent, the mind adapts. It doesn't rebel. It doesn't collapse. It recalibrates. You begin relying on yourself, not because independence was your goal, but because it was the most reliable option available. You learn how to sit with disappointment without needing to announce it, how to process confusion internally, how to regulate emotions without asking for reassurance that might never come. This is where people misunderstand you the most. They think you're strong by nature, that you were born self-sufficient, that you simply don't need people the way others do. But the truth is quieter and more complex. You became self-reliant because dependence felt unreliable, because waiting hurt more than adapting, because hoping drained you more than accepting reality. So you adjusted. You lowered expectations not because you became cynical, but because you became realistic. You raised self-awareness not to isolate yourself, but to protect your emotional energy. You became selective not because you don't value connection, but because you understand its cost. And slowly, being alone stopped feeling like absence. It started feeling like stability, a place where nothing unexpected could happen, a place where your nervous system didn't have to stay alert, a place where you didn't have to monitor reactions, interpret moods, or anticipate disappointment. There's a reason you notice things others miss. A slight shift in tone, a pause that lasts a second too long, a sentence that sounds kind but feels empty when it lands. That sensitivity wasn't gifted to you. It was trained. When emotional environments are unpredictable, the mind learns to scan, to anticipate, to read between the lines, to detect changes before they turn into problems. That's why you're observant. Not because you're suspicious, not because you assume the worst, but because awareness once kept you safe. You learned that moods matter, that silence can mean many things, that what isn't said often carries more weight than what is spoken. So now, you read emotional weather the way others check the forecast. Not out of anxiety, but out of habit. But this level of awareness comes at a cost. When you're always reading the room, you're rarely fully resting. Even in calm environments, part of you stays alert, listening, interpreting, adjusting. That's why surface-level conversations feel draining, not because they're meaningless, but because they require presence without depth. You're giving attention without receiving understanding, energy without reciprocity, effort without emotional return. And over time, that imbalance wears you down. That's when solitude stops being optional. It becomes necessary, because in solitude, that effort disappears. No signals to interpret, no emotions to regulate for others, no expectations to manage, no role to perform, just quiet. And in that quiet, your body finally relaxes. Your breath deepens, your thoughts slow down, your nervous system steps out of survival mode. That's why being alone feels restorative rather than lonely. Here's the distinction most people never fully understand. Loneliness isn't the absence of people. Loneliness is the absence of connection. You can feel lonely in a crowded room, lonely in conversations that never go past the surface. lonely while constantly surrounded, constantly available, constantly giving. Solitude is different. Solitude is intentional. It's choosing an environment where your energy isn't drained, where your emotions aren't misunderstood or minimized, where your presence doesn't require explanation or performance. You're not withdrawing from life. You're creating space to breathe. That's why 1 hour alone can feel more nourishing than an entire evening of forced interaction. Some people mistake your boundaries for avoidance. They assume you're closed off. They assume you're afraid of connection. They assume something must be wrong with you. But that's not accurate. You're not avoiding connection. You're filtering it. You've learned that access to you matters, that your energy isn't unlimited, that your attention is valuable, so you choose carefully. Not every invitation deserves a yes. Not every conversation deserves your depth. Not everyone needs full access to your inner world. That isn't selfishness. That's discernment. You understand the cost of overextension. You know how draining one-sided connections can be. You've experienced what happens when you give more than you receive. So you protect yourself not with walls, but with clarity. And here's the truth most people never consider. You're not behind in life. You're not broken. You're not missing something essential. You simply learned earlier than most that inner stability matters more than constant connection. That being at peace with yourself is more important than being constantly seen. At some point, you stopped fearing empty hours and started respecting them. You discovered that silence isn't boredom, it's space. Space for your own thoughts to finally speak without interruption. The most important conversations you'll ever have aren't always with other people. They happen quietly, inside your own mind. This is the unspoken contract you made with yourself. Authenticity over applause, depth over distraction, alignment over approval. So when you speak now, your words carry weight. They aren't rushed. They aren't desperate. They're intentional. And if one day you choose connection again, it won't be out of loneliness. It will be out of alignment because the person feels safe, because the energy feels mutual, because you don't have to shrink, perform, or explain yourself to belong. Until then, your solitude is not a flaw. It's evidence of adaptation, of awareness, of emotional intelligence that formed quietly, without applause, without validation, without needing the world to understand it. It is the quiet victory of someone who looked into the noise of human life and chose to build meaning within. And from that place, you don't disappear. You observe. You understand. And when you engage, you do so on terms that finally make sense to who you truly are. And there's something else that quietly happens when you live this way for long enough. You stop needing constant proof of your worth. You're no longer moved by noise, approval, or urgency. You don't rush to explain yourself. You don't compete for attention. You don't feel threatened when you're overlooked, because somewhere along the way, you learned that value doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself in consistency, in restraint, in knowing when to speak and when silence carries more truth. You've watched people speak endlessly just to feel seen. You've seen how volume is often used to cover uncertainty, how performance replaces presence, how busyness distracts from emptiness. And instead of judging it, you stepped away from it, not out of superiority, but out of understanding. You realized that not every space deserves your energy. Not every audience deserves your truth. Not every moment requires your reaction. That's why you move differently now. More slowly, more deliberately, more aware of what you give and what you withhold. You don't chase intensity anymore. You seek alignment, because intensity fades, but alignment lasts. And when you do connect, truly connect, it feels rare, precise, almost sacred. There's no need to impress, no need to perform, no need to explain the quiet parts of you. You're understood without translation. Those moments don't happen often. But when they do, they confirm something you've known all along. That waiting was never weakness. That solitude was never emptiness. That your silence was never a lack of voice. It was preparation. Preparation for depth, for discernment, for a life that isn't loud but is deeply lived. So if you've ever questioned this part of yourself, if you've ever wondered whether being quiet meant you were missing out, remember this: you weren't falling behind. You were refining. You weren't disconnected. You were conserving And in a world that mistakes noise for meaning, your calm awareness is not only rare, it's necessary. Because some people are meant to echo the world, and others are meant to understand it. Quietly,